Hello, I'm Randall Buskirk. In this video, I want to take a look at a joint mobility drill for your wrists. And we're going to look at the wrist because in the Z Health way of looking at our body, certain areas you can get a lot of good feedback from. They're high potency areas of the body because there's a lot of joints there. And because there's a lot of joints, there's a lot of mechanoreceptors or nerve sensors in those areas, and they feed information into your nervous system and your brain. So if you have deficiencies in movement or tightness or whatever it might be in one area of your body, it can affect your whole body. And in particular areas that are high payoff areas are potent to address, and the wrists are one of those areas. So the drills we're going to practice are for your wrists, and they're hard drills to teach, so I thought I would try it this way to see if this makes it more effective. So one way to think of it, when I say move your wrist, most people move their hand, and that's not really what we're talking about here. That's moving your hand. This is moving your wrist. So from the side, it's like this kind of action. So my elbow's involved. My hand, I'm trying to stabilize more or less. Okay, so that's the general idea. But to get a little more grasp of the movement, the efficiency and the correctness of the movement, I found that lying on my back is helpful for this. So this is what we'll do. I'm going to lie back. You can do this on the floor. You can do it on the bed, on the couch. It's a great drill to do anywhere. So another reason you might want to do it, not only for your wrists of course are connected to your fingers, your elbows and your shoulders and your neck, so that whole line gets some stimulation. Also, your wrists have a correlation with your ankles, so you might find some benefit for your ankles by moving your wrists well. You can try it and see if it happens for you like that. So anyway, I'm going to lie back, and I'm just going to bend my elbow by my side, all right, to start with. And the idea is I'm going to keep my knuckles facing toward the ceiling. This is knuckles not facing the ceiling. This is knuckles not facing the ceiling. This is knuckles facing the ceiling, if you can see that from there. So I'm just going to move my wrist like this. I'm basically bending my elbow, straightening my elbow and the wrist, and trying to keep my knuckles, my hand, in a sense, vertical, you might say. Does that make sense to you? So this is a kind of wave that I'm doing, a flexion and extension wave, moving through the wrist as a focus. If I just move my hand, it would look like this. Notice my forearm and my elbow aren't really moving much. So moving at my wrist and my elbow rather than stabilizing them and moving my hand. Okay, so that's my flexion and extension wave. Okay. And of course you'd want to do that on both sides. And then the next action you're going to do, I'm going to pivot to the side, I think, so maybe you can see it a little bit like this. So that's working let's call it the top and the bottom of the wrist, and we want to work the inner wrist and the outer wrist. So again, if I were here with my elbow by my side, one way I could do it is to move my knuckles, pointing them toward the ceiling or away from the ceiling to the left or to the right, okay? But that's not the action I want to do. I want to keep my knuckles pointing toward the ceiling as I move at my shoulder, elbow, and wrist. So it's in and out, trying to keep my knuckles parallel to the ceiling, you might say, pointing up toward the ceiling with this. So again, they're not pointing to the wall or toward the floor. They point toward the ceiling throughout the movement. It's very simple, but it really focuses the action to your wrist where you're getting the high payoff potential out of it. So once you've mastered the flexion and extension waves, the lateral side-to-side action wave of the wrist, then you can put it together into a little circle. And throughout the circle, your knuckles stay, pointing up toward the ceiling. You can do clockwise or counterclockwise. It doesn't have to be a big movement, but just an accurate movement. Strive for accuracy. So you might have to slow it down a lot and you work through a range that is comfortable enough for you with no pain. And you might do a few 3 to 5, 7 circles, clockwise or counterclockwise. From the side, it looks like this. So again, this is a hand circle, which is good to be able to do. But this is a wrist circle. Notice the difference where I'm moving at the elbow and the wrist, and the knuckles I'm trying to keep facing up toward the ceiling. All right? So that's a good one to start working. It's more of a closed chain type movement if you're familiar with that, because sometimes if your hand is on something, if your hand is on the floor, you still need the mobility in your wrist. All right? So your wrist needs to move. You can't move your hand if it's stationary. You're holding onto something. So the ability to move through your wrist is going to further your mobility in like push-ups, hand balance poses, downward facing dog, crawling, whatever it might be. You need the mobility to happen at your wrist. Okay, they can't be stiff. They have to be able to move with your hand fixed in space. So play with wrist waves, flexion, extension, lateral, and circles. See how you make out with those. All right, good luck.